Here we go. All right. Looks like folks are coming in. Good deal, good deal. Welcome, everyone. It is 2 o'clock. Time to get started for our informational webinar. Appreciate y'all joining us. So the purpose of this webinar is to talk to prospective students who might be interested in learning more about philosophy and or religious studies. We're doing this halfway through the semester with the idea that, if you're in your first philosophy class or first religious studies class or something this semester, now you've had a couple of weeks of this, and you might be thinking, this is actually very interesting stuff. This is very cool. What other courses do y'all offer? And, hey, maybe I could minor in this, or maybe even major or double major, but you might have some questions about, what does that look like? What kind of course do they offer? And what is required of a minor or major? What can I do with this degree? I'm sure you might have that question. If you don't, maybe your parents do, if you're considering doing a major, minor, or something like that. So we put together four of us here to do this informational webinar to give you a sense of what the program's all about and some of our options and that kind of thing. We're going to go about 30 minutes, we're thinking, and then leave some time for Q&A afterwards. So if you have questions, jot them down or just hang on to them there for a few minutes until we get to the end there, and we'll try to answer all of your questions for you live. You can drop them in the Q&A if you want, or you can just we can let you go live here at the end. But please mute your microphones if you would, so we don't get too much background noise. But let's start off with just some quick introductions. My name is Dr. Jason Sloan. I'm actually a professor of religious studies primarily, although I do teach courses that are cross-listed with philosophy, like science and religions. One class I teach that's cross-listed. And this is my 11th year at Georgia Southern. And like I said, I teach mostly religious studies courses. We've also got Dr. Dan Larkin, who's a professor in philosophy. And we've got Noah Evans, who is an alum, a graduate of our program, and also now works as an academic advisor at Georgia Southern. So he can answer questions and talk a little bit about maybe experiences as a student here, but also what's happened since you graduated. You got a job, right? That's the first myth about philosophy majors. They're going to be unemployed forever. Not true. Okay. And we've got Tristan Sanchez, who is a current major. He's a senior philosophy major. And so he's going to talk a little bit about his experience as a student, what it's like, the vibe, student groups, and all that kind of stuff. So why don't we go ahead and I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Larkin. And Larkin, you want to share with students some things about, upcoming courses we've got and the program and the major and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So once again, I'm Dr. Dan Larkin. I am a professor in the philosophy department. So I wanted to start before I go into like the classes, things like that. I think the biggest question that people typically have, probably most likely parents, is what you can do with a philosophy major. I remember when I told my parents I wanted to become a philosophy major, there was some concern. The concern is no longer there anymore. But I think we'll start with some practical things first. The first thing to know is that the majority of our students that are really dedicating themselves to philosophy end up doing that to go to law school, right? So philosophy majors score consistently highest on the LSAT. That's basically the SAT or the ACT for law school. For law school, either first or second in every single year that they do these tests. And the reason why is that it's not that we specifically train you to take the LSAT. It's that the LSAT is essentially a logic test, right? You're given a bunch of information, you have to decipher it and then figure out what the best or strongest argument or position is. And that's what you're basically doing when you're taking these philosophy classes. Philosophy majors also score highest on the GRE in the verbal and analytics sections, right? So the analytics section of the GRE, and the GRE is just essentially a test that's a general test to get into graduate programs across the board. The analytics section, that's a writing section. And this is basically where you're able to show your argumentative skills. And that's stuff that you will learn when you take philosophy classes. And a new emerging trend is that philosophy majors are finding themselves getting into MBA programs. So this is the Masters of Business Administration. And the reason why is like, yes, you would need the quantitative skills and statistics that most business schools are going to require, but you are also showing these sort of critical thinking skills, your ability to analyze a situation and to just simply understand the context of something better than people who did not take these sorts of classes. That all sounds great, but like I also have some personal stories of friends of mine who are in different fields. You want to know what kind of field you can go into aside from simply law school or graduate school, things like this. One of my buddies, Chris, he is in tech. So he basically does coding and he managed to ascend the ranks of his company. And now he works as a consultant and makes a significant amount of money. And he said he's better at it, not because he's the best coder, but because he was a double major, right? He was a philosophy major and a computer science major. And he's always said that's because he took philosophy classes that he's able to sort of better see the problem. So whereas other people look at a problem in code and they say there's no solution to this, he says philosophy sort of teaches you to sort of look at things differently, and it allows him to just come up with solutions other people just don't see. Another example of mine, of a friend of mine, his name is Chuck, and he is currently a vice president of a pharmaceutical company. He started at the entry level and just worked his way up. And he similarly has said it was his philosophy classes, the skills that he learned in those classes that allowed him to sort of ascend the ranks and get promoted quicker than people he started with, right? And so all of this is also, there's evidence of this as well. If you look at statistics, you can look this up for yourself. So the mid-career earnings, again, this is a myth that philosophy majors don't make any money. This is just not true, and the stats show this. Mid-career earnings for philosophy majors across the board is around $80,000 a year. That's higher than mid-career earnings of many business administration majors and other majors that you typically would think would make this money. So if money is a concern and that's what you're looking to do, philosophy as a degree has actually been proven to allow you to get to that height. Another fun fact is that philosophy majors are remarkably low as far as unemployment goes. So there's only a 3% unemployment rate amongst philosophy majors, which is significantly lower than a lot of different majors. So at the end of the day, what I always tell my students is that philosophy, it's not about the material that you're learning. Really, what I look at it as is that it's a toolbox, right? So when you take philosophy classes, what we are giving you is essentially a skill set, right? You are able to look at problems, analyze them differently, in ways that people from other degrees just simply are not trained how to do. And so, in effect, what this is doing is it's making you better at any other sort of degree that you'd want to pursue. And so I say that because most of our majors, I would say probably 90% of the kids who are majoring in philosophy are doing so through what we call a double major. So if you are, say, a communications major, or you're a business major, or a psychology major, in any of those degrees, there are going to be about 30 credits, maybe 27 credits or so that are reserved as free electives. And so you have to sort of fill those credit hours with random classes if you want, in order to graduate. So you could do that, or you could take that block of credit hours and you could add a second major, right? So you're taking all those hours and dedicating it to one field of study. I would actually recommend that you do this regardless if you pick philosophy. But the beautiful thing about the philosophy major is that we've specifically designed it to make it as easy as possible so that you could add it to the major that you're already studying, filling in that gap. And so what that will allow you to do is not only graduate with essentially 2 degrees, right, which makes you look good on the job market. You're doing, say, business administration, but you also have a philosophy degree. It will also make you better at whatever other field you're studying. So, for instance, if you're a journalism major, adding that philosophy allows you to think of better questions to ask, better angles to take. Business, I've already shown you through the example of my friend. It allows you to understand situations in business, come up with better solutions, innovative solutions that other people just simply wouldn't even consider. And that allows you to be better at your business classes and therefore better when you actually enter the world of business. Now, for those that are interested, we have a bunch of classes being offered in the spring. So I assume many of you are in intro now. But coming forward in the spring, we have a number of upper level classes. So we have ancient Greek philosophy. That's something I would be teaching. So we study Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, things like this. We have introduction to Buddhism. We have 19th century philosophy. So these would be people like Marx, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Hegel. Philosophy of art. So you're looking at the ways in which art impacts society, the ways in which we experience beauty. You're going to talk about music, things like this. Metaphysics, so like just the study of being itself, and that's some pretty hardcore philosophy right there. Existentialism, Also, another fantastic field where like understanding what it is to be human in the world, our interactions with other people, etc. Also, class on John Rawls, the 20th century political philosopher, and finally, philosophy of religion. So there's a wide range of classes there. So pretty much something for everybody. And if you're on the fence, you like philosophy, you're not sure you want to commit, you actually don't have to. You can sign up for one of these classes to sort of dip your toes in the water, see if you like it. And if you do, great, take more. So as far as that goes, what the degrees look like, we have a number of options. So first we have your standard Bachelor of Philosophy, Bachelor of Arts of Philosophy. This will be 30 credit hours. Now, if you are in intro right now, that counts as 3 towards those 30. So any person who's currently in an intro to philosophy class is already 10% done their philosophy major, right? And then you would take 9 more classes after this. We also, for those that are interested in law school, which is again, most of our students are taking philosophy because it is a gateway into law school. We have a bachelor's of philosophy with a law concentration. This is a little different in that you take a majority of philosophy classes, but then you also add in a mixture of political science classes and criminal justice classes that are geared towards the law, right? So if you want to use philosophy specifically as a tool to get you into law school, we have a track for that, and it combines those other majors that are typically associated with getting you into law school. And then finally, we have a bachelor's of arts with a concentration in religious studies. So for those who are interested in religious studies, we have this track as well, where you're taking a mixture of philosophy classes and religious studies classes. So you can take classes with Dr. Sloan, we have Dr. Curtis, Dr. Prude, and we have a new professor who's a Bible scholar, Dr. Armstrong. He's fantastic. So definitely take a class. He's going to be doing stuff on the Bible if that's something that interests you. And if not a full-on major, if you wanted to start a little bit less pressure with the minor, and that's what I did. I was a philosophy minor first, took 2 upper-level classes, and then the rest is history, essentially. That's only 15 credit hours, right? So you could basically be mixing in a philosophy class with other classes that you have, and it's just sort of a way to sort of switch things up, change things up. And you might find yourself more interested, and you can always declare the major later, and those classes you took for your minor to sort of pile in. The last thing I want to talk about before I hand it over to Dr. Sloan, perhaps to talk about some of the religious studies classes, is that we have a number of extracurricular activities on campus that are just quite a bit of fun. And you don't have to be a major or even a minor to attend. And we encourage people from all different majors to attend these because we're essentially just discussing things that everybody sorts of thinks about, but doesn't really have the opportunity to talk about. So the first one is we have the philosophy discussion group. This is like your standard philosophy club, meets on campus on Wednesday evenings. And the kinds of ways this operates ranges from students presenting their work and then talking about it, or they'll have a kind of a debate style thing where you walk into the room, the topic is, say, abortion, and you're assigned a side, right? So you walk in, even if you're pro-choice, you might get assigned the pro-life side, and then you have to come up with arguments to defend pro-life, which is a really great activity to get involved in because it forces you to sort of see all these issues from multiple sides. And that usually, typically, will refine your own views on the situation. We also have Philosophy After Dark, which meets off campus at Eagle Creek Brewery in Statesboro every Thursday at 6:30. And that one's very informal. We pick a topic ahead of time, so like what is love, for instance. And then it's a very student-run discussion. There's professors there every week, and we sort of moderate, but really, it's just a student-run informal discussion on more philosophical topics. And in that one in particular, if you're not a philosophy major or minor, we encourage you to come because I've been running that for about 15 years now. And the discussions are always better when we have people from different points of view chiming in just to keep us philosophers in check. Finally, we have the Ethics Bowl, which is a more formal debate style club where you are assigned to a team and you go to competitions and you do schools on particular ethical issues. They actually went all the way to semifinals of the state's championships, I think, last year. That's about it for now. And I'll pass it off to Dr. Sloan if you want to talk about religious studies classes just a bit before we pass it off to our 2 students.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Dr. Larkin. I'm going to just be brief to talk a little bit about religious studies. Maybe some of you are in my intro classes right now. So Quick funny story about being a religious studies major. I was actually an economics major as an undergrad, but I took a religious studies class. I was like, oh, that was really cool. I was interested. I'm taking another one. I took another one. I took another one. And same kind of idea. And I was like, I went to my advisor who was econ professor, and I wanted to work in the field of finance. And I was like, I kind of like this religious studies stuff. And he's like, dude, you can major in anything you want as an undergraduate student, and you can go get a job in a finance company or do whatever you want. I was like, even with religious studies. He was like, yeah, and he was right. So my first job offer with a religious studies degree was with Edward Jones, and I end up working with them. So and the other part of that story is I told my mom I switched from economics to religious studies, and she said, "You're not joining a cult, are you?" So, and the answer to that is no. But speaking of cults, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the coursework in religious studies if you're interested in that as a minor or a concentration. So, religious study is an interesting field because you can be religious and study religion as a religious person, and maybe you want to go on to be a member of the clergy or pastor, or go to seminary, something like that. You can take Bible courses with Dr. Armstrong, who's our expert. He's teaching a class actually on Introduction to the New Testament in the spring. But you can also study religion from a non-religious perspective. That's kind of what I do. I approach religion from a scientific perspective. So I teach classes like science and religion, where we look at things like Galileo and Darwin and that kind of thing, and teach psychology of religion and so forth. You can also study religion from a historical perspective. Like in the spring, we got a class on the history of religion in the United States. Religion in the U.S. is very fascinating because we don't have an established church with the government. So we get this amazing diversity of different groups in the U.S. You can study religion and politics. You can study religion and gender. Just so many different things to study about religion. So, as a concentration, as a minor, it's a very interesting kind of program because, like I said, you can be a religious person and take religious studies courses in preparation for work or career or vocation in religion in some kind of field of religion, or you can take it in a kind of like a history of art or kind of approach where you're studying about religion. And just like with philosophy, it can help you with just about everything. So I mentioned we have introduction to New Testament in the spring. We've also got history of religion in the U.S. We've got intro to Buddhism. So if you're interested in Asian religions, we have a Buddhism class. And then I'm teaching a class on the Statesboro campus on cults. And so there's an interesting class. We're going to take a sociological and psychological approach to cults. I was just prepping today and rereading about Jonestown and the People's Temple and drinking the Kool-Aid. So if you take that class, we'll be learning about that. So, all right. So if you have any questions about religious studies ever, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat with you about it. So now, why don't we kick it over to Noah? Noah, as I said at the beginning, is a philosophy alum. He graduated in 2022 and then went on to graduate school and is now working as an academic advisor. So Noah, you want to share your experience and any good tips for the students?
Yeah, thanks. Like Dr. Sloan said, I graduated here back in the spring semester of 2022. I took a bit of a gap year between then and then went to the University of Miami, Ohio for my master's degree. And like has been mentioned frequently here, and like has probably been brought up in many discussions with your family and friends, the big question that I also got was, what are you going to do with that? And especially when I doubled down on it and decided to go to graduate school in the same field. Um, and the many of the answers offered here are great, but I want to really sort of emphasize that like the universality of the skills that you get, that there's no field that I can think of where being able to wrestle through these kinds of texts, again, not necessarily just because of the content, but because of the way they teach you to think differently and to tackle problems differently. I hesitate to even guess at a field that would not like you would not flourish because of those skill sets. And that has been my experience by and large. So I did do graduate school in philosophy, so maybe that's a bit of a cheat there. But I got out of that and have since returned back to Statesboro. My long-term goal is to do doctorate work. I'm in it for the long haul. But in the meantime, I am not broke and I am not jobless. I am working as an academic advisor at the university. And one of the things actually specific to this job is the ability to try and like puzzle a way through getting a student's curriculum to shake out in their better. There's a lot of students that come in with sort of jumbled and confused credits from a bunch of different places. And it's this like fun game of Tetris every time to try and make sure that the student gets the most that they can out of all of the credits that they're given. And there's also like crazy life circumstances that happen, and we have to like start bending around and thinking in new and novel ways to like make sure that the student can actually finish the degree and not have to just sort of walk away from it. And a lot of that ability, not just in the sort of logical skill there, but also in the ability to like carry good conversations with people, to like be able to, there's more interpersonal skills as well, actually also come from at least my experiences in the philosophy world. So I will heavily recommend it. I'm biased, like I said, but I think that the kinds of skills that you get are not just job applicable, but just sort of universally applicable in life. That the ability to sort of critically analyze things is not something that's just good as a marketable skill, but also that's good for you as a person, uh, to be able to like think about the things that you're seeing and hearing on a daily basis, to make sure that you're not joining a cult, or anything of that nature. Um, and so I digress, but I also, on a few technical points, want to just reinforce what Dr. Larkin said, that the double majoring, if you don't want to sort of fully jump ship from whatever major you're doing, no worries. You're still welcome in the philosophy world. You are super able to double major. That's a very common thing to do. I actually double majored in my undergrad. I did history and philosophy. And so the philosophy degree works really well for that. So I would also say that just from an advising perspective, the earlier that you can think about these things, the better. But again, with the flexibility of the philosophy degree, there really is a lot that we can make do with, even if you're not like, if you're further on in your degree and you're like, oh, I'm sort of, the ship has sailed on me taking up anything else. You might be surprised. So I would just encourage you to have a conversation with your advisors or with one of us. There's several advisors in the arts and humanities that would be more than happy to talk with you about double majoring there. But yeah, so as a whole, I would say that my experience has also been heavily influenced because of the support that I've received afterwards as well. A lot of the experiences that I've had, the opportunities that I've had, would not have been possible without the sort of awesome nature of the people that work in the philosophy and religious studies departments. They have been a tremendous support with me, not just during my undergraduate degree, but afterwards. So it's not just, again, not just a marketable skill, because it is, but you're also making really good connections with some really good people. And for more on the sort of present state of that, I'll kick it over to Tristan, who is also a present undergraduate here working. So Tristan.
Yeah, so I wanted to start off just by talking about my experience through college and higher education, and how I ended up in philosophy. So in 2022, I got out of the military and I approached college with this idea that I think most people in our society do. Hey, higher education is almost more like a trade school these days. I'm going to go learn a skill and I'm going to get a high paying job, and then I'll figure out happiness later down the road, right? I began switching my majors a whole lot of times. In fact, I switched majors 4 times um, while I was going through all of my classes, and I noticed each time I switched, they got progressively more into the humanities and liberal arts. And I was worried because, I looked at university when I was younger, and I was like, oh, it's those classes are a waste of time. There's nothing good about them and whatnot. And I had read this book called You Majored in What? Which is a book that discusses what the liberal arts student has to do to navigate their higher education. And like Dr. Sloan said earlier, you know, especially with your undergrad, you can do so much, you can do anything. But I think that that is very anxiety producing for a lot of people. A lot of students that I meet, they just want a pipeline. They want, hey, here's my nursing that leads here. Here's my engineering that leads here. It's about this safety. With philosophy, the biggest advantage that I've felt from it is how much it's impacted me as a student holistically. So, for example, like I love reading, I love writing philosophy, I love attending conferences, and this was very unlike me, especially earlier in my education. So it made me approach my education differently. It's difficult for me to describe, but probably kind of like that universality that Noah was talking about earlier. Like I am so much more interested in the sciences and psychology and math, and I believe that's because philosophy has given me a different, again, approach to my education. It's been very empowering to me from that standpoint. What finally made me decide to switch to the philosophy major, because again, I came to university and I was like, hey, I want to commission back into the military. I want to go be an officer. So I just need a degree. And the path that I was on just really wasn't fulfilling for me. Um, it wasn't challenging. I didn't feel a connection with the professors or with the course material. And when I took my first intro to philosophy class, like instantly I felt almost instantly because I had a real difficult time with the reading at first. Like I think that's the main complaint from a lot of students is, these guys write terribly. Um, but I got real close with my professor, Dr. Nornhog. And we have two other professors here on the Armstrong campus, Dr. Simmons, Dr. Rempel. And it's just this. I almost can't describe it. It's like this overwhelming sense of community and love that's within the Department of Philosophy that I just really appreciate that makes me want to do my studies. Like I don't approach school as a chore. I'm a little saddened that I'm going to graduate next May actually. Another thing I wanted to talk about was, being realistic as a philosophy major, right? Like most of us, all of our lives have been taught, hey, STEM is the right way. I call it the right way because I went to high school during the Obama administration that had focused on like STEM and propelling students to STEM. And I remember this speech from President Obama in which he was citing the story of a young man who did everything the right way. He got his STEM undergrad and he was in so much debt and he was still having a hard time finding a job. And I see that this is still the case, if not, getting worse. I think this illusion of the right way
Welcome, though.
through school is a myth, and so approaching that, I decided for myself, hey, I'm going to do what I love, I'm going to do what I enjoy, and I think that has only paid dividends to me as a student because I could have never seen myself wanting to take math classes, wanting to take science classes, wanting to further my education. But somehow philosophy really did that for me. Um, some other things that attracted me to philosophy, right? My military experience and my upbringing. I've always been interested in, I think, rationalizing a lot of the experiences in my life, whether they be ethical dilemma or finding out how existentialists deal with trauma. Again, a holistic understanding of the human condition. And I do believe in this way, philosophy attracts many like individuals with these shared experiences. It could be something very fulfilling and profound, and that's the biggest way that I explain it to other students. Let's see. On this topic of, being realistic, a plan is necessary. I don't know if that's just my experience from the military talking, but for the liberal arts students, I because it's not such a pipeline, I really emphasize the importance of a plan. Um, I did feel the fear for a while in my college experience of a plan falling apart. Uh, because of certain reasons, my commission to become an officer has been delayed. And last summer, I really dealt with that feeling, that anxiety of, oh, what am I going to do? I'm a philosophy major. There is no starting position at the Philosophy Factory in downtown Savannah. Um, but I was pretty quickly able to figure out, okay, here are my values. Here's what I want to do. Um, here's the bare minimum that I need to be happy. And as long as I live my life that way, I know wherever I end up, I'm going to be fine. I think philosophy really helped me expose a lot of my values and also expose a lot of things in life that we do that cause us unhappiness without knowing they make us unhappy. Um, I really wonder how this is coming off. It's a lot easier to talk to other, philosophy students about this, but I encourage y'all take a class, and you'll see for yourself. You'll feel what I'm talking about. Or like the professors were talking about earlier, we also have extracurriculars on Armstrong. I'm going to drop the details for the Armstrong Philosophy Club meeting that's happening today. We try to meet weekly. I just dropped it in the chat there. So, and in summary, I get asked a lot, like, "Hey, what are you going to do with your philosophy degree?" Right? Like every time I go out, I meet a stranger, and that question gets it's the biggest number one question that I get asked. So at this point, I've just started answering people like, "I'm gonna be happy," and that I think that reframes a lot of people's objective to life. But as Dr. Larkin mentioned earlier too, law school is something that I began considering a year ago, and I am currently on that path, um, following my commissioning into the military. So I still have a plan. I'm not winging it here, and I don't think any student can wing it, but I don't think that sets the liberal arts and the humanities apart from STEM. Lastly, big values for me in philosophy have been new outlook on life, on education, reinforcing my values, and most importantly, the friends and community and conversations that are had in these circles. I have many friends who are going to grad school together. Many people within the department have grown close enough to live together. It's really this beautiful sense of community. And if y'all come by to the philosophy club, especially the meeting we have tonight, you'll see what I'm talking about. And yeah, I really hope to see y'all around. If you see me walking or in classes at all, feel free to reach out. I love having a conversation. I love talking to other students. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Tristan. Thank you, Noah. Well, we did it. We stopped talking at 2:30-ish. That's pretty impressive for a bunch of philosophy people to stop talking on time. I'm very proud of us. That's good. Now, I want to echo kind of what Tristan and Noah have said about their experience with students. Like from the faculty perspective, one of the things that we love is working with students and getting to know them and mentoring and having these conversations. And I'll use another word that hasn't been brought up yet, but I think everyone would agree in that word that characterizes the philosophy program, and that's fun. Like we have a lot of fun. I've been told by so many students over the years, the last 11 years at Georgia Southern, like that was the least boring class I've ever had. I actually have fun. And the best comment I ever got on a teaching evaluation was a student said, "You tricked me into learning," which I love, right? So I think that captures kind of the spirit of the program and the faculty and the students. Like we love to get along and have good conversations and important conversations, but also develop friendships and mentorships and have a good time doing it. So, all right, we've talked enough. Why don't we stop at this point and start entertaining some questions? I'm sure some of you have some questions, and they can be general questions, like what about whatever. They can be specific questions, which classes offered when and that kind of thing. But if you have some questions, you can drop them in the chat, and we can try to keep up with those and answer them live. So don't be bashful. You can drop your question there. If you have a question, I'm sure other people might be thinking, having the same kind of question. And then while we're going through this, if anybody else on the panel has some concluding remarks, that'd be fine too. Or if anybody else has some comments they want to throw in, that's fine as well. Anybody have questions? This is a stump the chump time. See if you can ask us questions we don't know. Oh, there's Dakota. Hey, Dakota. Dakota's an intro class. So Dakota is just said hi. Is in my intro to religious studies class, and he's actually doing an honors research project on Christian Gnosticism, which is pretty cool. So if you have particular interests, you can even go off and do mentored research on your own to learn more about it. So.
I mean, I guess if I'm going to give a conversation starter here, is anyone in either intro to philosophy or intro to ethics? And do you have anything to say about, the classes so far? Have they interested you enough to get here? What are your thoughts on it? If anyone wants to share anything on that?
There's a couple questions in, yes, there's exactly. The question was how many credits you need for a minor in philosophy, and that's 15. And this other question was, did you say there was a philosophy class on Buddhism? Yes. So in the spring, there's a class on Introduction to Buddhism, and you can take that as either a philosophy class or religious studies class, right? So depending on if you wanted to get like a religious studies minor, you can do that as well. You can count up religious studies, or you can count as philosophy. We have a number of classes that do that. I teach a bunch of those actually. So like I teach medieval philosophy every other year or so, and that basically just tracks the ideas of philosophy through the Middle Ages, give or take. And so you do Christianity in its early form, the origins of like philosophy in Islam and Judaism, and late Christianity as well. My favorite part about that class is we spend about a quarter of the class on the women of the medieval period in philosophy, which are typically wildly underrepresented or spoken about. So it's actually really fun because they weren't really in communication or in correspondence with the men that were writing. So their writing is extraordinarily free in a way, and their ideas they're speaking about the same things. They're speaking about God, the soul, free will, but they're approaching it from a radically different position. So it's a fascinating class. I also teach a class called Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. So we track those two guys. Point being, you could take those classes towards religious studies or philosophy, given the nature of the material. Um, okay, yeah.
But if you decide in that class that you don't have any free will, then how do you give them a grade? I mean, how does that work? I mean, it was all predetermined for it to work out that way, right?
Well, if it's predetermined anyway, I was always going to give them that grade in the first place. So
So no grade appeals are allowed in the free will.
no, it's always
Yeah,
going to.
well, we're talking about a little bit of the theme of predeterminism through or self-determinism through existentialism tonight at the Armstrong Philosophy Club.
And to answer the question there, what would the next step be if I put philosophy as my major? So one of the best things you can do that yourself, right? You can go into your My Georgia Southern and you'll see the change major minor, and you can add like a secondary major or if you just want to change it, you can change it. You can do it all yourself. I'd also recommend talking to your advisor about doing that, right? So they can set you up. And there's Lori right there. Or you can come talk to one of your professors, right? So I always willing to talk to any student who wants to discuss the major. We can go through all the details, all the classes you need to take. We can figure out what your interests are, so we can figure out which classes are probably best to start with. So you kind of start with something that you're familiar with or intrigued by. Um, are we allowed to leave the Zoom now? Was the next question on the list.
You are self-determined.
Sure, Emily, your call.
That's right. You have free will. We had a
Um,
question about the law path,
yeah, to
possible pathway.
if I'll speak on that from the student perspective. So I made that decision about a year ago that it would be something I would seriously consider and pursue. And I did wonder if I had to declare a concentration in law. I was speaking to our past department chair, and she expressed to me that she saw it wasn't necessary for me to declare that. Simply go through undergrad, utilize the resources on campus that help a student to prepare for law school, such as LSAT pretest and learning about the law school application process, which can be done with other students as well. I know off the top of my head, there are 4 philosophy majors, including myself, who are interested in law school. Um, and so, yeah, there's nothing particularly unique from my point of view other than beginning the planning process and setting yourself up for that.
So there's another question on would you
Yeah.
say there was one philosophy class that's particularly hard to navigate through? So that's sort of the beauty of the philosophy classes is that different classes are going to appeal to different people for different reasons, right? So a class like ancient Greek philosophy, which is what I'm teaching in the spring, that class, I focus that class particularly on Plato's political philosophy. So it's more about how we structure governments and the various problems that arise when we're trying to figure out how to best govern ourselves. But then you have but for some people, political philosophy or politics is just not interesting. So that class would be particularly difficult to navigate. On the other hand, you have a class like metaphysics, which is dealing with some more abstract comments or like ideas, basically. And for some people, that's more appealing, right? So getting into like the nitty gritty of logic, things like that. So if you're more math minded, a class like metaphysics would be right up your alley. So really, it depends on your interests and your strengths. But one thing is for sure, wherever you start, the more classes that you take, the other classes are just going to become much more accessible. And that's the challenge of philosophy, though, is like pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, whether that be simply in investigating various ethical issues or just more abstract questions concerning like the nature of existence and life.
We had a question about the availability of courses on the Armstrong campus. Are there going to be enough in-person courses offered in philosophy on Armstrong campus to do a minor?
So to my knowledge, we've had 3 classes every semester. So unless you need the 4 philosophy classes, I wouldn't see like that becoming an issue. The one semester where we did have one of our philosophies drop off, we were offered I forget the courses they call this, but it counted as a religious studies and philosophy course. So it was still, very possible to take it, but consistently there are 3 upper divisional philosophy classes offered here at Armstrong.
Will a minor in philosophy with a major in nursing help at all? So that'd be a question for a advisor for sure. But it would help, it's just in my experience, specifically if you take classes. So we have classes that are offered like contemporary moral problems, ethics. We also have biomedical ethics specifically. And that would be a really, really, really good class to take if you're going into the medical field. Teaches you about various issues in the field, and it just sort of help you understand not only the material at hand, but like also like the sort of personal side of it. And for those signing on for the attendance, we can track all of this. This is all being recorded, so we can track it that way. Don't worry.
And religious studies course or two might be helpful for nursing as well, so you can understand sort of the religious and cultural background of patients and that kind of thing.
If I can give a response also to that difficult class, for me personally, it was symbolic logic, which was pitched to me as math for philosophy. That one was very challenging for me, but that's the exact class that triggered a love of math for me. Like as soon as I finished that class, I was like, oh my God, for some reason I want to go take an algebra class. I want to go take a calculus and statistics class. And in fact, I'm planning to do so after I graduate, and just focus on the math classes here, expand myself. It also had a very interesting effect, and I use this to show off in my intro classes here. But the symbolic logic really helped me to understand the writings of philosophers more because I no longer see the amalgamation of words and bad writing. I just see sometimes the form of the argument through symbols. It's not perfect, right? But it's just made understanding logical systems a bit easier because there's like a underlying system that I'm aware of. So for as challenging as symbolic logic was, I loved it. I loved it very much.
And I was going to just chime in quick on the nursing. Some are a little easier than others to work with, but there's also a lot of different plans out there for financial aid, people bringing courses in with them, dual enrollment, things like that. So I'd encourage you to talk to your advisor, or me if you're on the Statesboro campus or Armstrong, really. I do the philosophy advising here, so I'm always willing to help a student kind of figure out how that would work with their current major.
Okay.
Okay, friends, we have 1 minute left. Last chance to jump in for questions on today's webinar.
Yeah, any hard questions like is it a waste of time? Um,
Oh, great question. Help towards a career goal in social work? Absolutely.
Yes,
1,000%.
absolutely.
1,000%.
if yeah, I don't want to say how. I think that'd be for you to figure out how most it would help and let us know. Um, Perhaps if I had to give some profound, nice, if Paula, nice question. If I had to give some profound answer, it'd be in this exercise of empathy through understanding different points of view. As a side note, though, Cassidy, I'm aware of a VA scholarship program called Vet Center that pays for psychology undergrads who want to pursue a license and doing social work. Um, yeah, they pay for the license and the follow-on education that's needed in exchange for, I believe it's 4 years serving at a VA clinic of their choice.
And I'll say just personally, one of my best friends in the world is a social worker. And we have deeply philosophical conversations about things like how do you best help people and what does good support look like? And uh, very, challenging practical issues social workers deal with have deeply philosophical um, dilemmas and questions and issues and challenges. So being able to work through those intellectually, ethically, will at least I'm not a social worker, but he shares with me that it's helped him in his career because there's some challenging, you know, experiences as a social worker, and just having a philosophical foundation to think through those complexities has been very helpful. Because being a social worker can be challenging for the social worker because of that.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that goes in line with what I said earlier about a new outlook on life. You know, if philosophy is what gives you your grounding for how you want the world to operate, and you approach your social work like that, I could only see that being like a net positive in humanity. Um,
Sure.
Jayla, yeah, time for my biased answer to this one. I think Armstrong is so much better than Statesboro. It's just the nature of it is it's a smaller campus. It's a tighter department of philosophy over here, which allows us to be very close with our professors. There's not a single time I pop into their office hours where, they're not available or ready for some conversation, whether it be specifically about class or maybe something personal, that I'm working through. Um,
To be
yeah.
fair, Tristan doesn't spend much time on the Statesboro campus, and so maybe he's not fully aware of the tight-knit community that we have here on the Statesboro campus. I'm not one to start a war or anything like that, but when
Just
I hear
saying.
shots fired,
Bias
I have to
Yeah.
fight back.
That's
I,
fine.
my buddy Gavin is up there. He he at first attended Statesboro, came down to Armstrong for a year, then he met us, but already put the down payment on his apartment and had said, if I knew I was going to meet you guys, I would have stayed here in Armstrong.
Logos, the use of logos. That's good. That's good.
I'll close with a favorite quote. Uh, Without music, life would be a mistake, by Friedrich Nietzsche.
Mm, interesting.
All right.
I'll give you my Nietzsche quotes now.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, if you're on the Statesboro campus, please come see me. Shoot me an email. Love to talk to anybody who's interested in the major or the minor. Just taking another philosophy class would be great.
Yeah, that was good. Those are going to be my part. Next steps for you. Check out the spring courses for registration. Get involved in any events, student clubs, student activities. Those are fun. And if you have any questions, reach out to Dr. Larkin or me or Noah or Tristan, anyone, Lori, and we'd be happy to help you out. Appreciate y'all joining us. Hopefully it was helpful. Spread the word. Spread the word. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, please come tonight. Consider coming tonight. We're gonna have food and a great time. And I hope to meet some of y'all in person.
All right, guys. Bye.